and welcome to the Lobcast Podcast, Mixers and Marketing. I'm Stephanie Donaldson, your hostess with the Marketing Mostess, and I'm the Senior Content Marketing Manager here at Lob. I'm thrilled to be joined by Dave Krawcheck, Senior Director, Supply Operations. Dave, do you mind introducing yourself to our listeners?
Not at all. As you said, I'm the Senior Director of Supply Operations here at Lob. Basically, what that means under my purview is all of our operations for print, letter shop, and mail, and that's up to and including relationships with printers and the post office. And my team manages everything for the logistics and delivery of mail pieces to the USPS and then tracking through to the end delivery point.
Very exciting stuff. Very different than what I do on a day-to-day basis.
It is the other side of the marketing equation very often, meaning, there is the side of coming up with things, and then there is the side of getting it to them, creating it and getting it to them. And that's where my team comes in. Yes.
Well, I'm very thankful for people like you who manage logistics, because that is not my strong suit.
It does take a little bit of a specialty, but we've got some of the best people in the business to be able to move it forward.
Well, and that is why we enjoy having you on the podcast and joining us.
Thank you so much.
Of course. And listeners, if you want to make the complimentary cocktail that goes with this episode, you're going to need 2 ounces of silver tequila, 1 ounce of Cointreau, 3 ounces of orange juice, an ounce of lime juice, and 1 ounce of simple syrup, and then an orange slice for garnish if you wish. You're going to pour all the ingredients into a cocktail shaker that's filled with ice, shake, and pour into a glass. I did skip my orange peel for my garnish, but it's still a delicious cocktail. And cheers, everyone. Welcome to the show. Thank you again, Dave, for being with us.
No problem. Thank you for having me.
All right. So today we're taking a little time out from talking about marketing mail to talk about operational mail. It's a critical mail type for many organizations, but it's also often heavily regulated. So Dave, when we're talking about operational mail, what exactly are we talking about?
So operational mail is a different subset of mail, it's specifically tailored to a communication between a company or an organization to a specific group or team or a subset of customers and of known group. An example of something like this would be for a customer or a brand that has a specific set of customers that fall into a category that they may need to do some kind of communication to. To your point, also, sometimes this is around regulatory items. You can think about municipalities, HOAs, those kinds of people who have to have a level of communication with a group of people for very specific reasons. And a lot of times they can be regulatory, or they can be usually informative, or the other side of things, it could also be something as simple as invoices, statements, or those kinds of financial obligation communications.
Yeah, I often think of like the tax statements that always come out at the end of in January that you're always
exactly. If you think of it, it is kind of again, it's a little bit around the process of doing business. In some of those kinds of communications that have to go on.
Definitely. So do you think there are any industries that send the most operational mail compared to other organizations or areas?
Biggest one, you brought up just the biggest one, tax documentation or any of those types of things. Those are probably I'm going to say, be the biggest ones. Municipalities or highly regulated companies that work in those spaces, telecommunications, or jurisdictions, taxing jurisdictions, or those kinds of places that have a responsibility to notify or to talk to a specific customer set. Those are definitely the highest ones. I will also say there's a bunch when you have a big customer base, a B2C, when a brand has a B2C communication, where those customers aren't just transactional, but they are more like subscription based. They will also experience a lot of operational mail that they will have to send so that they can keep their customers up to date or up to status with, anything from statements to terms of service or, contractual changes and things like that.
No, definitely. And I'm one of those people that even though I get the preference center, it's like, we want to just send you emails. I'm like, no, you have to send me a paper statement or I will not read it.
Exactly. It is a really nice way that you can actually make sure that you receive communications that you want and you notice them and you get them and that you see them. Like I will say, I'm very technologically inclined, but I still like to receive paper statements from a whole bunch of them because it keeps me on track. I make sure that I get it and that I see it. And it also gives me good historical volume to be or perspective to go back to and say, hey, this is what I had from last year. So it really does fit into a lot of people's just psychological way of categorizing what's important and what they need to take care of.
Oh, definitely. I love keeping my old water bills so I can be like, oh, wow, we really used a lot of water in June, but we're barely using any in January.
It is not the most prettiest thing, but it is so ridiculously helpful. It really is amazing.
Yeah, because again, if I get the email being like, your water bill is due, I'm probably going to have opened it and then scroll past. But if I see that bill sitting on my desk, I know like, ooh, I have to get that paid.
The inbox is definitely a very scary place sometimes when it comes to what you can have coming in there. It is a little simple to lose that kind of stuff, whereas an actual physical product, a physical letter or card that you have is a heck of a lot easier. And you know, one of the other things, famous things I've said for years, you can't throw an email up on a refrigerator to remind you. Just doesn't lend itself. Whereas some of these other communication methods do.
Oh yeah, my husband just put a coupon on our fridge for a restaurant near us that sent us a piece of mail, and we're like, okay, we're gonna remember to go there someday.
Redemption cards, not this topic, but redemption offers. Oh, they're so huge.
All right, Dave, in your opinion, do you think the form factor is a major element of operational mail? I mean, obviously, some industries like healthcare do need to protect their patients' identities and sensitive personal information and will default to letters. But do you see many operators A/B testing different formats in their operational mail?
So in this space, it is challenging because you do have to be sensitive to the content that is being distributed sometimes. And so that is going to be the big driver out of the gate as to what the content of the notification is. That is going to tell or drive a lot of decisions. And yes, envelopes do drive a lot of those pieces because of what you said. It is secured inside of a thing that is protecting the information of the person. So you will see a whole bunch of material going into that form factor, meaning an envelope form factor. Okay. But I have seen like there are opportunities to be able to use other form factors, like for instance, folded self mailers, where you can have a lot more. A couple of things. You have a lot more space to be able to do things because they're slightly larger than the letter component. They're printed on a little bit of a nicer stock or a nicer material. And they are, we do seal them up. They do fold closed so you can have information on the inside. If it's not very specific information, meaning like if you're informing a group that, something such and such kind of policy is being put in place in a time frame, or something's going to be stopping within a time frame for a large group, it's not specific to one person, you can definitely start doing some of those in those other form factors. But you do have to be sensitive to the content that is in the mail piece. And, that is sometimes people do have a tendency of erring on the side of caution. So they will put it into an envelope.
And I think that's definitely a safe practice too, right? Especially in an era or an area that can be heavily regulated. You want to make sure you met every regulation possible when sending that piece of mail.
There are some of those operational things that will come into play. Like you want to make sure that, it did go out to, on a proper timing, that it did go to the right person, and that your material and information was secured. And also, sometimes with some of these things, people will treat an envelope a little differently than they will treat some other mail pieces. So they will look at that, and like when people look at their mail, they do an instant evaluation, okay, and they're going to look at those things, and so form factor will play into that a little bit. And if they see something from who it's coming from in that from window, and then they see an envelope, they're going to probably take a little extra time to look at that as opposed to some of the other form factors.
No, I actually just did that the other day. I got a letter from our fire district about tax increase or something, and it was in an envelope, and I was like, why is the fire district sending me mail? So of course I had to open it, whereas if it came on a postcard, I would have been like,
It would be a different interaction. Exactly.
very much so. So
Yep.
I know you have a lot of experience in print, and Lob, we work in automated direct mail. But let's say someone sends operational mail and they're not automating it to route it to a printer. What kind of questions should they ask a print partner before working with them?
So there are a whole bunch of things, and this can be a little specific to what the people's use case is, and also what their internal structure is. Like, where are they getting their, like the first questions that they need to ask internally before they start going outside. Where is the data coming from? Where am I going to be able to get that? What is the content that I'm going to be producing and sending out going to look like, and where is that coming from? And then how am I going to be merging that information together? Okay, are we going to be able to do that? Or am I expecting the printer to be able to do that? There are a bunch of those kinds of first out of the gate questions. Have those questions answered, because they're what's going to get asked first, also from the production. But what you're going to want to look for, a couple of things is, because this mail is usually, as we said before, a lot of times it's regulated. A lot of times you want to make sure you have to prove when something mailed. So, where it mailed from, how long did it deliver to, when does the end person receive it? You want to make sure of a couple things. You're always going to want to make sure you talk about timelines. You always want to make sure that you talk about mail dates. When are things going to go through? How are they going to be able to produce this? And are they going to be able to feed you back a lot of the information that you need? For instance, when did this mail piece actually deliver to this address? So you want to think about not just, the individual manufacturing things, but you want to figure out the whole entire life cycle of one of these campaigns, so that you can then break it apart and also be able to measure and monitor the progression of your mail piece through all of these things, so that if there is a situation or a problem, you can jump in and fix it. Or you can also prove that, hey, yes, I made my best faith effort. And you'll always hear that phrase, a best faith effort, to be able to produce these things and to deliver them and get them to that final recipient.
Interesting. Okay, so we kind of teed up the conversation around automation of operational mail. So we now know what kind of mail operational mail covers, but let's talk about the technology that makes it happen. How has direct mail automation software changed the game? What was sending operational mail like before technology evolved to automate the process?
So for what we would call variable data printing, because that's a little bit of what some of this is when we're talking about sending a letter directly to a specific group or a specific individual. That is the convergence of taking data and incorporating it into the creative. Now, years ago, this technology was pretty much limited to either printers or letter shops. And you had to go to them, let them program out everything that would look for. You'd have to make sure that everything looked the way that it was, like you dealt with the creative first, but now you had to deal with the data and what we used to call, like, for instance, live read proofs. What did it look like with the data incorporated? It was a bit of a long, drawn out process, and you were very highly dependent upon those producers, those print shops or letter shops, for them to be able to handle or do the manage the creative. As technology has been evolving, and definitely, for instance, even in our platform, a lot of this technology is now being able to be brought to the end user. Okay, that you're able to take a lot more control over the creative aspect of the piece and how it looks, and then also how the data interacts with the piece. You're not quite at the mercy, if you will, of some of those print providers. You're able to control it yourself. So that's one of the first good things that technology has enabled. The second thing is that with this automation, you're able to, and I'll speak specifically about, for instance, our API. Our API will automatically, you set up your creative and your data stream correctly. Our technology will take all of this in. It will create that proof for you. You're able to see exactly what goes through. But you're tying not just into that creative creation of that PDF or of that piece, but also of all the way the production process down the line, because we've built on from being able to create that mail piece, to get it to the printer, to hand it to the post office, and be able to track it all the way to the delivery at the home front. And you can then monitor all of that through our dashboard. So it has opened up what was before pretty much a little bit of a black box kind of a workflow that you hoped everything went through correctly. We've now opened that up, given a lot of visibility, given a lot of transparency to know exactly where each one of these steps are. And it's not just in our process, as I said, it goes all the way through. We utilize the informed visibility system from the post office that tracks and traces every mail piece that goes through the system. And we're able to feed that back into our system. We're built for it. We're ready for it. So it's a really nice add-on that allows for all of these things. Whereas before you were really, and it's allowed right to the end user instead of having to be dependent upon some of those printers.
No, I mean, I have worked in print in previous organizations, and years ago, I actually worked for a municipality, and we were sending out a postcard alerting the residents about an upcoming event. And I was able to make it on a computer, but then it was sent off to the printer. I had no idea when it got actually put into the mail until I finally got my copy back at the government building. And I was like, oh, this does not match the colors that I expected it to have, but people still showed up. So it all worked out in the end. But I had no idea. I had no visibility into that. It was just, I hope it's in the mail.
Yeah. And that can be a little unnerving in this specific space. Like there is in this area that it is sometimes more important to know that it happened and how it happened. And, like having that information really at a almost a click of the button kind of thing is incredibly helpful, and also like nerve reducing. Like, you're not sitting there going, oh my God, what if, or what happened? You can really dig into knowing and being assured of where things are. And to me, that's, I like knowing things. I like knowing exactly what goes on. So having that is really, really nice.
Oh, definitely. I think everyone in our space likes having that access to that information.
We are a group that's a little bit of we like to have control. Yes.
That is a very good way to put it. All right. So let's talk timing. If someone wasn't automating their operational mail, how much time do they need to account for to get operational mail designed, printed, and into the mail?
So this is a highly variable number. Talk about variable print. Without having some of these things together, because you're dealing with a bunch of different groups and a bunch of different people, the timelines, anytime you incorporate a different step into the process or a different group into the process, unfortunately, you're introducing delays and also time, because you have an entire thing of a handoff, that other team to be able to take and ingest that process, know what they're supposed to do, and then execute on it. And each one of them brings a level of overhead to that process that just extends the timeline, quite honestly. So, depending on how often and then how clear the instructions and the objective and the requirements of the job are for each one to understand, it can really start to push out. So like, you could go from days to weeks of being able to actually get this into the mail. And then depending on the mail, the execution of the mail into there, you then have delivery time. Mm-hmm. So your time frames can really get pushed out sometimes, again, because you're just incorporating a whole bunch of different factors involved into it.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest factors is the printer that you end up using, right? And I think that's one of the big draws of Lob is our print delivery network. So Dave, how do you think that our print delivery network has changed the game for those that do send operational mail?
So the important thing is what we've done, okay, and this is both technologically and also operationally. We have taken all of those things out of the equation, okay? We have pre-negotiated with printers to be able to have capacity at their facilities to produce our mail within a time frame. So we have, our regular network volume that we handle. You send it to us. We have eliminated all of those things that I was just talking about. We've taken away that handoff. We have prearranged with our print partners, you are going to receive X and we expect you to produce Y. And as long as we stay within those channels, which are now our technology platform with that overlay, is exactly what that does. It keeps the stragglers out of the way and allows us to efficiently hand off to our print producers, and they know exactly what they need to do. Okay, so there's no questions, there's no back and forth. What about this? You don't have those things. All of those questions have already been answered so that they know that they can go on the click of a button. So that allows us to know that they can produce X or Y or Z number of pieces in a time frame, and why we know when that mail is going to go into the stream. That's the first thing that we do. The second thing that we do is we do optimize also our internal routing engine, which is our own developed intellectual property, is going to go through and make a whole bunch of decisions on that mail piece, from what kind of permutation is it, where can we produce it, what is going to be the fastest production time, and also when are we going to be able to get that thing in home as quickly as possible. So a lot of decisions that that get made that give you the optimal production path to get that thing in home as fast as possible. And that's inclusive of both our production time, but also mail delivery time. So we get really aggressive with making sure that we take the most advantage of entry into the post office for delivery to get it to that home delivery point as fast as possible. And we can do this also on a much broader and national scale. So depending on where some of these things need to go or what that execution looks like, an individual print shop is generally, for the most part, going to be producing from one location, and then it's going to be going out to everywhere in the nation. Yep. Our print delivery network is already a nationwide network where we can print and produce at different areas, and they are strategically aligned into the highest areas that are going to give us the best result of both production and delivery. So that's something that not every single print shop or every single local location has. As a matter of fact, I'm going to say that our network is as expansive as almost anyone else in the industry, exclusive of everything. We have one of the best networks out there.
No, and actually, we did a webinar not too long ago with some of our nonprofit partners, United Through Reading. And one of the reasons they came to us was because of the print delivery network, because they're based on the West Coast, and they would have, donations coming in from the East Coast, and they're like, oh shoot, we've got to get to the printer. They were batching their letters. So it was like 2 weeks could have gone by from the time that person made that donation to when they're getting their acknowledgement. And it was like, we can't wait that long. Like, we have to have these donation letters go out. And by being able to partner with a printer on the East Coast, boom, that letter's in their mailbox potentially within like a week, 5 days or even less.
You're going to have a lot of that mail. It's going to move a heck of a lot faster. I have a little saying I always like to say, it's a lot easier for me to push pixels than it is to push paper. And I don't want to be trucking material from California all the way over to New York and vice versa. I want to be able to get it, moving things across. We want to take advantage of technology and then also take advantage of the proper logistics and have the best melding of both of them. So that's, when we start talking about intelligent mail and intelligent routing, this is what we're talking about. Make the most logical decision and, make a decision that makes sense and then execute on that through the platform. It's an unbeatable combination.
Yeah. So since we're talking about intelligent mail already, when I think of automation, obviously one of the first things that comes to mind is increasing efficiency. Dave, do you think that's a pretty fair statement to apply to direct mail automation?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, every single type of this production can be improved through automation and through the application of these technologies. And while sometimes people will get a little intimidated by it, or they think, oh my God, this is challenging. I like to say it's not as hard as always that you think it is once you get involved with it. And then once you do get into it, you start to realize all of the additional things that you can do. Like, it really is a freeing and a liberating thing to say, you know what, we can do more than just the bare minimum. We can raise this up a notch. We can be a little bit better. I'm a huge fan of incremental improvement in everything that we do. And this is one of those things that when you learn to be able to add this technology on top of each other, it just continues to grow and it continues to get better. So you go from what could just be possibly construed as a very basic and minimalistic black and white letter that you're sending out now as a notification, and you can absolutely turn that into a multi-purpose and full color, even if you want, a piece that drives home multiple things, and it can be a multi-purpose instead of singular purpose. It allows you to be able to take advantage of the production process. It allows you to have better communication to your end users, and it returns back to you. It can turn that piece into a much more better and effective, economically effective communication piece to your end users. You can turn things into win-win-wins.
Yeah, no, I love that. I even think, again, going back to the United Through Reading example, they were even talking about just increasing efficiency across their organization, because since direct mail had been such a manual process for them, by being able to automate it, they were able to allow their employees to focus on what they actually did best, instead of trying to be like, okay, I've got to stuff envelopes and then we've got to drive it over to the post office and get it in the mail. And like, I'm going to turn around and do the same process week after week, freed up hours of their time to focus on what they do best.
You always want to have your people doing what they do best and what you're paying them for, because you don't want to be paying people to do a rote task that something can be replaced. Like if you have a technological overlay that can replace that, oh my God, use it. Okay. Because you want to then have those people, instead of them, the stuffing envelopes kind of conversation, you don't want them doing that. You want to have, gain either a technological advantage or a mechanical advantage in production, to be able to make sure that those things go through, and it allows you to do more, sooner, faster, and better at a similar or a better economic cost. Mm-hmm. That's what you want to be able to do, because one thing then also builds on the other. Like that's how you continually, back to that continuous improvement, that's how you also continually grow. So you can do more, you have more bandwidth, you have more capability, and also at the end of the day, your customers or the audience that you're engaging with has a better product that they're receiving, and you get more engagement. Engagement is what it is all about.
Definitely. All right. So we've discussed automation, and now let's move on to the next piece of the puzzle, integration. So Dave, what types of CDPs, ERPs, CRMs, or other customer data tools do you see used most frequently in the operational mail space?
Oh, so this is a hard one, because I'm going to say this is fortunately, unfortunately, a very diverse group is the best way that I can put it. There are, like in a lot of the spaces that we're talking about, we are going to have a wide variety of technology, both as to sophistication and integration capabilities, because you can go all the way from some places that might have a very manual process, like, and I'm not kidding when I say this, someone inserting names and addresses into an Excel sheet and just managing it that way, to all the way to up to there are full-fledged ERP, MIS systems that can integrate into all of these things, or CRM systems that can integrate these things. Mm-hmm. And there's everything in between. Okay. You can have homegrown, you can have SaaS models that you purchase offsite, you can have on-sites. So there are a whole lot of options in this space. Okay. So one of the hard things to deal with this, so like that's a hard space to deal with. Okay. That's challenging, because variety is the spice of life, but it can drive guys like me crazy. So what's really nice, so how do you approach something like this? And I love the approach that Lob has taken for this. So we have taken this statement of saying, okay, when you want to integrate with us, we are going to not work on these very specific platforms or these very specific technologies. We are going to build open technologies that interface with almost everyone across the board. So we have developed, so our flagship technology is our API. Our API is very robust. It is mature. It is well documented. And so all of these different people that we talk to have their own decision and ability to integrate within that API in the way that best suits them. So I don't have to build into one or the other. I don't have to have 10 different solutions. Like you get to choose your own your way to interface, which is I really think is going to be the best approach, because it isn't tied in like you have to do it this way. Yes. It is something that, what is your technology stack? What is your level that you have and you feel, and how do you do that? You can do that, and integrate it through the API. We also have our campaigns dashboard, which is another way that you can do it, which allows for a what I would call the low or no code experience, that you would be able to come in. You can come in and you can exactly do it. Exactly right. I like to look at it as, like you have different tiers. You can have the beginner experience through our campaigns dashboard. You can also, that gets you up to your middle tier of, I know a little bit more and I'd like to do stuff and I want to play with the API, but this allows me to continue to be functionally operational and I'm not stopping my mail from going out. Mm-hmm. And then you also get the experience of playing out with the API and being a full technology stack of getting something through. And you can grow into each one of them. So our platform allows you to be able to do that. Start out something and keep your mail moving, but also grow into adding efficiencies into the process as you go along. And it's all right there in one subscription. It's really great.
Yeah, no, definitely. I love our campaigns. That is my level of what I want to do with mail. But again, I'm coming from the marketing side. But I think, operational mail, they're going to probably put more resources towards engineering to make sure that this mail goes out. They have that opportunity to do a lot more with the API-based version.
Absolutely. And it is all right there. You can go to our website. You can see all of our documentation there. You can read it and see when I say that it's mature and it is robust, you will see exactly what I'm talking about, that you're able to do a whole bunch of things. You get the information that you want. And you get to decide. We put the choice in your hand. We don't tell you how to do it. We put the choice in your hand to be able to do what you want to be able to do.
If you build it, they will come.
Exactly. And they have come in droves. So because it is greatly appreciated by that team that you're talking about and where they're doing, everybody is under constant pressure, team pressure and resource pressure to be able to do these things. So like when you have a tool like this that has enabled you, back again to what we were talking earlier, letting your team do the things that they really want to do, like really driving the needle, moving the needle for them, allowing them and taking away some of that struggle that they had, because our stuff can do this. It really is, again, back to that win-win kind of situation.
All right. So we've already talked about how Lob's direct mail automation platform makes it a lot easier. Do you think there are other tools out there that direct mail operators can use to make sure that their mail reaches their intended recipient? I mean, again, in industries that are highly regulated, it's imperative that personal and potentially sensitive information makes it to the right person.
So this is, again, another one of those things that I say, this is one of the most important things that you can do and that needs to be done and that ensures success. And that is data hygiene. Okay. So I say this, I've been preaching this for years. It all starts with the data. And if your data is accurate, as accurate as your data is as accurate as your campaign is going to be. So a couple of things that you definitely want to be able to do, or you want to make sure that is going to increase the success of your campaigns, is that number one, you do want to have controlled data or a controlled process for your data. Okay. You want to make sure that what is coming in, that it gets validated or verified, and that you're not getting unusual or false information in your data stream. One simple example that I can give back into that Excel conversation with somebody typing in zip codes, something that you wouldn't necessarily think being that big of a deal, but there are zip codes that are inside of the United States that start with the number 0. And if you're typing in Excel is going to forget about that first 0, and it's just going to put in the other 4 digits. Well, now all of a sudden you don't have a valid zip code. Now there are ways that these things can be fixed and they can be looked at, but that's just one example of how you can start to get a little caught up with data input and data integrity.
Mhm.
You also want to make sure that you're going through, and a lot of print shops do this, but you want to make sure that when you're going through, you're doing a CAS certification on your address list, so that, and what CAS certification is the automation of making sure that that address is a valid address in regards to the post office.
Mm.
And that, you have the correct pronunciation for or the addressing for street or road or boulevard, those kinds of things. And then also that you can have what's called a zip +4 attached to an address. And then there's also the NCOA. You'll hear a lot of talk about NCOA, the National Change of Address. Everybody who has moved is familiar with this. It's the little yellow card you go to the post office, you fill out, and you give to them. That gets put into a database so that if they see that you used to live on 123 Main Street, but you now moved to 2nd Avenue, that now the post office isn't going to deliver that mail to the 2nd Avenue. It's going to get readdressed and sent to your new updated address. So these are two things that you can always do for your mail campaigns. We do it automatically by default with the work that we do. But you want to always make sure that those are done. And you want to make sure that your list is continually updated, that you can have what you have in your database, in your CRM and your ERP, or in whatever data source that you have this in. You want to make sure that that data hygiene is being done. It's being done on a consistent basis, and that your list is as good as it can be. Okay. And this is one of those things, like we've started calling it hygiene because it's something that you have to do all the time. It's not a one and done thing. You want to make sure that, data lists fall in and out, people come in, people move, people do all kinds of different things. There's a lot of updating. You always want to make sure that your list is as updated as possible, because that is going to ensure, number one, definitely deliverability to the endpoint. The person who's supposed to receive it is going to get it. It's going to, number two, also make sure that if you do also use your data and you're doing that for some of the content that's in there, that the right person is getting the right information. And that if they are not getting it, that you have a methodology for making sure that they, you can redirect it, or you can also remove those people from your list. So all of these functions, you want to make sure that you have kind of built into the process so that you can get the most out of the money that you're spending and paying for all these mail pieces to go out.
Oh, definitely. I've talked on the podcast before how I'll still get mail. Now, I changed my name 5 years ago. I still get stuff sent to my maiden name. And I'm like, where did you buy this list? Like, this is not the right person that you're trying to get. I mean, at least they got me at home, but
it is. Yeah. You can see the operators in this space who do it right. And then you also see the ones who are sometimes just glorious fails. And it's like, oh my God, some of the things that you can see. And those fails are the ones that you never want to be associated with that. That's not the place you want to be, because, not all information that goes out or PR is good PR. Sometimes you can really look very bad, and you don't want those things to happen. And in the space of what we're talking about, when we're talking about, compliance mail and operational mail, you really don't want to find yourself falling outside of those requirements. So it is really good in making sure that you do the due diligence and the operational functions that you want to have so that you get the best result at the end.
Definitely. And I think, both sides of the house, both operational and marketing, we both care about data hygiene. We both want to make sure that our data is clean and accurate, so we're targeting people correctly. And part of that targeting is personalization. So with integration, I immediately think of personalization. But that's also because I'm a marketer and I'm always looking at ways to personalize content. But obviously those that send operational mail want to make sure that they're reaching the right contact. But outside of that, how important do you think personalization is in the operational mail space?
Personalization is very important in a whole bunch of reasons why. Okay. And I'll start with, so we've been talking about a couple of different pieces, but we've been talking very generically. I'll get a little bit more specific, because some operational mail, for example, like this is inclusive of things like we were talking earlier, invoices, statements, a lot of one-to-one communication between a company or an organization and an individual. Okay. So there's above the just delivering sometimes like a notification, there is also the importance of making sure that the information in there is correct and getting to the right person. And this can go across, like with statements, you want to make sure that you're giving them proper and up-to-date information. And that is going to be variable every single time, because I don't know about what your Visa card looks like, but my Visa card has different charges on it every single month. And I want to make sure that those are going to always be accurate. Okay, kind of that kind of a situation. Mm-hmm. If you're talking in some of the other compliance, like municipalities in regards to regulations, you could be talking about also tickets or violations, or code violations that have to be delivered to people. In the healthcare space, you could be talking about a whole bunch of different things of communications, such as explanation of benefits or information about prior treatments. All of this stuff needs to make sure that it is getting to the right person. And so the data integrity is of the utmost importance here, to make sure that the right information and all of the right data is finding itself on the right piece. Also, though, there are other opportunities also. So like that's the operational stuff, but there are also opportunities. The United States Postal Service has come out with a whole bunch of different opportunities for people who are doing mail like this to take advantage of some benefits and discounts in postage. So like, for instance, where we're talking here, they have, if you're in what they call the trans promo business, where you're sending out statements or invoices, they have a bunch of different things with color trans promo or advertising, adding advertising into trans promo, where you can get discounts, or you can potentially see discounts on some of your pieces. So there's a lot of opportunities, and the post office is continually trying to work with this space to give them incentives to continue to mail and continue to use the channel. And hey, if you do all of these things, which will benefit both sides, again, back to the both sides of the equation, you can do things like that and be able to see a benefit to you when you're doing these things. So there's a lot of opportunity here. And there's also, again, back to that multi-use opportunity that I was talking about earlier. Can you go in and like if you're using it as a notification, you may, and you want to promote or move something else, you can also include that on the piece, and you can include, have those types of things, and use that marketing vehicle, that operational vehicle, as also a marketing vehicle as well. A 2-for-1 deal, I think everybody would jump at the chance.
I feel like people in the telecom space are very good at that. They send you out your statement, and then it's, oh, by the by, do you want to add this package? And you get 20 more channels.
There are a bunch of different companies or industries in here that do that very well. One that I will also say too, like casinos. Casinos are very good at doing this. Like they know, anybody who's ever been to a casino, it's all about the experience when you're in the casino, and you give that little card and you start swiping, and you join also loyalty programs or anything like that. This is information that they're going to utilize to be able to cultivate an experience for you and make it better, so that, because if they make a good experience, you're going to come back and you're going to spend your money. That's what a lot of this is all about. And they are very good at being able to, take that information and do things. When you get your reward statement, how many stays did you have? We want to make sure, hey, you're going to, if you only do 2 more stays, you get to the next tier. There's a lot of things like that you want to be able to do. And this is good informational, marketing that you can take or you can get to people. And you're going to try to incentivize them to act. I mean, that is what all of this stuff is about. You're giving them information that you want them to act upon. And the more you get into these things, the better you get at it, the higher the lift and the effectiveness of the campaign is going to be.
No, definitely. All right. So Dave, do you see any other, let's just call them marketing principles, that have been adapted in the operational mail space, like A/B testing, using QR codes instead of printing a unique URL, or instead of pointing people to calling a phone number? Do you see any of that happening in this space?
I think that it has been a slower uptake, but I think the reason for it is that, back to what I was talking about before, people were much more about just simply having the activity happen, as opposed to continually improving the activity. And I do think you're starting to see some of it. QR codes is a huge one that I think that It transitions, I like to say, from the physical to the digital. Okay. And it allows somebody to be able to have what they wanted, which is that communication, that paper thing we were talking about before, but it allows you to transcend into that digital world, which is what a lot of people, marketers, and I'll even call it corporate executives, are really looking to be able to have. They want to have both of those things. They know they need to do their business, but they also want to be able to motivate people to do what they want them to do. So a lot of those things that I believe we are starting to see some of that stuff trickle in. We are starting to see that come into that space. And it's becoming more, instead of just simply being the notification, it is multi-purpose and multi-threaded as to what's going into it. And a lot of the things that we are talking about, you're seeing call to actions going in. You can see about QRLs and URLs and that you can get responses. And you can really start to drive, they're using this space to really drive the users that they're marketing to or that they're communicating to into all of these varying spaces. So, I attribute it also to the tools are getting easier to be able to use. Back to what we were talking about before, where this automation comes in. If I take away a lot of the time that you're devoting to a rote task because it's painful, and take that away with technology, you are now able to raise the level of the rest of the other. You can dedicate more time to and raise the level of those other things. So we're starting to see a lot of that come into this space, which is really helpful. And it's exciting to see that these things are going out there, because it's only going to make the space better. It's only going to improve the space. So I'm all about improvement. Let's keep rising the tides.
Well, I think both sides of the house need to share lessons learned, what's working, so everyone can continue to improve across the board.
Everyone should always strive to find not just what works in their own little segment or their own pathway, but you really want to be aware of all of these other spaces, because there is improvement that can be happening across the board. And, when you have that cross-pollination and all of those teams coming together, it's great for everybody to understand what's going on. It makes everybody's job a little bit better. And at the end of the day, better employees make a better experience, make better customers.
Well, I can't think of anything better to end our podcast on than with that. But Dave, I do just want to ask you, do you have any final thoughts that you want to share? Or is there anything that we didn't get to today as it concerns operational mail?
I'm going to say, for operational mail, I think we've touched on a whole bunch of things. The only last thing I'm going to say is that, back to when we were talking about all the different systems that are out there or that are capable out there, it is really hard to touch base specifically on somebody's individual struggle, and there are going to be a lot of them out there. So the only thing that I would encourage everybody and anybody listening is, if we didn't touch on something like that, reach out to us, ask the question, raise your hand. We are really engaged with the space to want to, if we don't have a solution for your problem, we're going to want to make one. And so we want to be able to do that. So there should never be a fear of raising your hand in this space, because of all of the variability and all of the different options and all the different things out there. People are all in the same problem. Raise your hand, ask the question, reach out. You're not gonna regret it. You actually appreciate it, and you're gonna probably get a lot better solutions. So that's about the best advice that I can ever give, because you'll only make yourself better.
No, and I've definitely seen on some of our G2 reviews of people saying wow, I had this specific problem and didn't think there was an answer, and Lob's team was all over it to figure it out for me.
Yeah, it is really, that's the fun side of being able to see all these different use cases. All the use cases come with solutions. So there's really a good chance that somebody has seen and somebody has the same problem that you do. So, don't think that it isn't out there, and don't think that there isn't somebody trying to solve that problem.
Definitely. All right. Well, thank you so much to our listeners. Thank you for joining us for Mixers and Marketing. If you do want to dive deeper into the topic of operational mail, please download your complimentary copy of our ebook, Operational Mail Handbook, to get your operational mail into shape. You can do so over at lobdemo.co/operational-mail. That's lobdemo.co/operational-mail. As always, you can browse our library of episodes over at lobdemo.co/lobcast. Otherwise, thanks for listening. And that's all, folks.